Some of my greatest Loki storylines is where Loki isn't quite sure who he wants to be. A good guy, a bad guy, it's always hard to tell. There was a time where Loki, after doing a good thing for once in his miserable life, which ended up in him dying, sacrificing himself, he was able to be reincarnated in the body of a young child, dubbed Kid Loki, of course. And this child had so much potential, limitless potential. He could be anything he wanted to be, not just the villain Loki, but maybe something more positive. However, Loki had a bit of a backup. A crow in the form of Equal. It was a backup of the older Loki. And this Loki managed to trick the child Loki into sacrificing his self in order to give Equal his body, thus creating a more pseudo version of the Loki from the movies, who went on to be a good guy, a bad guy, everything in between. An agent of Asgard, you name it. It was wild, wacky adventures that was all over the place. Loki the god of stories. Loki the god of mischief. It was fun times, and very reminiscent of Tom Hiddleston's Loki, who could be anything from a serious threat to a minor annoyance. And when it comes to the Loki television series, it feels very reminiscent of those storylines of Loki going on these adventures, these missions, and just dealing with the surreal and out there. And the Time Variance Authority is definitely out there, taking place not long after the Battle of New York, much like how we saw in Avengers Endgame, where the Avengers went back in time in order to get the various Infinity Stones. They messed things up after the Battle of New York, and this version of Loki managed to grab the Tesseract and get out of Dodge, only to later be picked up by the Time Variance Authority, the TVA. And this is because of the fact that Loki has gone off the beaten path. He's doing things that he is not supposed to be doing in any way, shape, or form. I love the TVA headquarters. It's surreal, it's out there, it's weird, it's wacky. It's very reminiscent of Doom Patrol for the most part. Very fun stuff. I loved it. And the funny thing about the TVA and their creators, the Timekeepers, these beings who, took it upon themselves to make sure that the timeline doesn't have unnecessary splits, that it doesn't create a multiverse of madness, if you will. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And the Timekeepers and the TVA used to be kind of separate entities. They weren't associated with each other, but they were both introduced in Thor comic books. So combining them here kind of splits the difference for the most part. Why not? Just put them together, boom! You got the TVA of the MCU. Simple, clear, cut to the point. And Loki is basically being sentenced to die. There's a lot of pageantries, a lot of allusions to the DMV and all that, waiting in pointless lines and all that good stuff, but because he is a variant, he's not supposed to exist. His destiny, more or less, is to die. But he's kept from this by Mobius and Mobius, who has a need for Loki. Someone's going around killing off TVA troopers for the most part, and Mobius feels that Loki would be able to help him deal with all of this. So he sits down Loki and tries to get to the core of who Loki is. What would Loki do if he was able to escape from this place? Because of course Loki is being abstinent as all get out. It wouldn't be Loki if he wasn't. But, Loki is unwilling to cooperate. Even when Mobius and Mobius shows what happens in Thor the Dark World, the death of Frigga, because of what Loki did, because he was trying to point them in the direction of Thor. Frigga ended up dying instead, which Loki felt terrible about in that movie. And, knowing that here, he feels terrible about it as well. But he tries to deny it, thinking that, they must have her somewhere in here. Frigga, she has to be around. Something like that. He tries to deny it. He even tries to escape and goes on this wild chase through the TVA, managing to pick up the Tesseract that he brought with him, even finding more Infinity Stones. Hilariously enough, and much like in Marvel Comics, they don't work here in this universe. Most Infinity Stones don't work outside of their main universe. And because none of those stones are in their universe, they don't work. They're over glorified paperweights. That's the joke in this series. And Loki's just like, wait, these are the most powerful objects in the universe. If they're nullified by the TVA has to ultimately be a greater power. So he stands in awe of all of this. So you can see the wheels turning in his head. But he slowly makes his way back to Mobius's office while Mobius isn't around and kind of replays the rest of his life. Mostly the events of Thor Ragnarok, where we see the death of Odin and Loki and Thor ultimately reconciling towards the end of all of that. And Loki has great performance by Tom Hiddleston, where the emotions that he shows on his face, and because it's all silent, he's just viewing his life for the most part, and it's a very sweet moment. Up until he gets to Avengers Infinity War, where Thanos kills his ass, something fierce, and Loki kind of has a bit of an existential crisis. The fact that he just dies just like that, very simply, very matter-of-factly. Loki just dies, and he kind of has a bit of a crisis on his hands. Like, he's like, glorious purpose, huh? What a laugh. But ultimately, he's once again confronted by Mobius, who finds him in his office, and Loki ultimately confesses that the person that Loki is, does he enjoy hurting people? No, not really deep down, but hurting people, that's a way to show strength from his point of view. It's through that he's able to show his power. It's the ultimate tool for the weak to show that they are strong. So I like this. I like this little bit of introspection for Loki that we never really got before. We get sprinkles of it here and there, but to have it all laid out on the table, pretty fun. And so ultimately, Loki agrees to help out Mobius track down this person killing his agents. However, when Mobius tells Loki who it is, much to Loki's shock, it's another variant of Loki, who has gone around collecting various tools of the Timekeepers. So we've got a rogue Loki on our hands. And much like in the comics that I enjoyed, Loki versus Loki. One of the other situations in the comics was not just these, Cole, this other backup version of Loki taking over Kid Loki's body, but the Dark King Loki from thousands of millions of years into the future, who had conquered Earth and wiped out humanity, trying his best to make sure that the equal Loki backup stays the path, gets to where he is. He wants to make sure that his reality is the only one that comes to pass. So it makes me wonder, is that what we're going for here? The dark Loki, the King Loki of the future, trying to ensure his own future or his rise to prominence? Is that what we're doing here? I'm curious, because in a versus yourself, it's about time Loki ends up taking a really close look at the kind of person he is deep down. But so far, not the most bombastic first episode that we've ever seen. Honestly, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a bit of a better one, but I at least enjoyed the setup that this did. This first episode did a lot of legwork to help us move forward from here. So I'm hoping that the second episode really brings it and really just invests me in it. Because right now I'm kind of like, it's alright. Tom Hiddleston and all that. I always watch something with Tom Hiddleston playing Loki. Like, come on. Be crazy not to. But it's not as chaotic as I thought it would be. While the Time Variance Authority is kind of weird and wacky and very, like I said before, very reminiscent of the Doom Patrol, it's at the same time still not the greatest challenge for Loki. I want to see him really challenged, really struggling, and really trying to press forward into who he'll be from here on out. Because it's just like, you can't go back to being just regular old Loki. You gotta be something more, something different. And what that's going to be, who knows? But this Loki is, given a whole new lease on life, and I Can't wait to see what he does with it. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think about this first episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you feel like they could have done something a little bit better? And what do you think about my theory that ultimately this is a kingly Loki trying to secure his place in the future? I mean, it feels pretty obvious, but to what degree, it's hard to say. But if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hitting the bell for notifications. Or don't, I ain't your daddy, but I still love you like one. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.